Hey everybody, David Chatham here with Angel Oak Creative. Thank you for listening to another episode of our Nonprofit State of Minds podcast. I like to think of this as an opportunity to pick the brains of nonprofit leaders here in North Carolina and beyond. Really focused this year at Angel Oak on building a stronger state of nonprofits in North Carolina, because stronger nonprofits make our state stronger, our people stronger. We just all benefit when nonprofits are thriving. So really just looking at how we can have conversations that might further that goal. Today, I've got a great guest in Daniel Alexander, Program Director at Mission Triangle. Hey, Daniel.
Hello, good to see you.
Yeah, welcome. For those who aren't familiar with Mission Triangle, they are an amazing organization that equips ministries, nonprofits along about, I think it's 5 core areas, including things like board governance, marketing, fundraising, all of those areas that are core to the operation of and success of a nonprofit, helping them to be really effective and efficient and just make a bigger impact on the kingdom and on the communities they serve. So thank you for being here today and for all the work that Mission Triangle does. We're big fans of Mission Triangle here at Angel Oak Creative.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and it's fun to be in the mix with some of the other guests that you've had. I look up to a lot of them and excited to be counted as part of the party.
Well, you all certainly will do so much already, and I'm confident that this conversation will add to that list of accomplishments. So grateful for your time. Tell us a little bit about how you personally got into the nonprofit world and your role at Mission Triangle. What was that journey like?
Sure. Yeah, it depends on how far back you want to go. I could basically say I was born into it.
Okay.
But if you want to go all the way back, I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but both my parents, were in the nonprofit sector as we define it, in its wider version. My dad was a law professor, and my mother was a public school teacher in Atlanta. So I grew up around education mainly, but that nonprofit space, and they were also on the boards and involved in all kinds of organizations in the Atlanta area where I grew up. But yeah, I graduated from college trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And so that was the natural track and just the compelling, passionate, cause-oriented track that I feel like was my path. And so the quick of where I've been is 10 years in the school setting. That's where I went first.
Wow.
At a private school, and then 7 years in the kind of poverty alleviation space, an organization called Jobs for Life, based here in Raleigh. So I kind of flipped the socioeconomic sides of things, covered both of those angles, and then the last 5 years at Mission Triangle. So I've got 22-ish years in there, throw in a master's in organizational leadership along the way. And then I serve on a number of different boards and different activities here in the local area.
Well, I think that qualifies you to have this conversation. You certainly outrank me in those areas. So it's neat to hear everybody's journey to get to where they are. Now, tell us a little bit about, I mentioned Mission Triangle a little bit, but tell us a little more deeply what you all do, your mission, and how you engage with mission ministries and nonprofits.
Sure. So you gave us a good explanation at the very beginning there. We come alongside of nonprofit organizations, primarily faith-based organizations, though we're certainly not exclusive to that. That's just the perspective we come from. But we have people from all different types of organizations that come to our workshops and trainings. But we come alongside. Our mission is to help Christian-led nonprofits of the Triangle primarily, though we'll talk about more later how that's widening as we go. To expand their impact. So we come alongside them with 3 verticals: assessing, helping them understand what they're good at, where they are, kind of what they need to be thinking about; training, best practices, tools, and resources, and all of that; and then implementation. So we want to provide as much one-on-one time with nonprofit leaders to help them actually take all the things they can find from Google or our trainings or anywhere else they find training and actually put them into practice, because so many of them are wearing 17,000 different hats. And we want to resource them as much as possible to help them actually move some of this forward.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we work with a lot of the same nonprofits, the same ministries that you work with, and it's getting easier and easier to tell the ones that are engaged with Mission Triangle, because they really bring a sense of effectiveness and efficiencies, and this sense of almost a sophistication. And I don't mean that in a snobbish way, but more so of that sense of what are the right and the best practices, right, to help them succeed. So we've seen the benefit of it because it helps us do our job from a selfish standpoint, because you all are giving them the tools they need to come prepared when they're ready to have services like ours. So it's exciting to see how that has evolved over, now you guys have been around for
29 years.
Yeah, I thought it was like 20, 30 years. So, I know there's been some evolutions in there, but, overall, your mission has always been to, equip and empower these ministries and nonprofits. I want to, I appreciate you reminding me about those three stages, those three phases, those three areas that you're focused on. I think one of the things you do that's interesting that not all nonprofits do regularly is that assessment phase, right? Talk about that, that health score that you all use. And I think that's an interesting way for people to kind of get a baseline, right, of how healthy their organization is. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, it's great. And the way you describe it is actually what we call it, right? So it's called the baseline health assessment. And we've taken what we believe are the 10 highest level, most important best practices of our 6 core areas. You said 5, you were really close.
Sorry.
We built it into 6 at this point, but so it's 60 questions, 10 questions for each topic, and we encourage leaders to take it once a year with their board and their key staff to say, where are we? It's not a report card, so it's not a gotcha type of moment. It's just hey, what is the industry standard? What's the best practice? What's the most important stuff to actually run a nonprofit, and where do we sit? And the big question where we see the most interesting conversations is my team aligned? So we give them a report afterwards and help them kind of think it through, and there's an alignment column, and usually there's a lot of non-alignment happening even within a team. One person on the team will say, yeah, we have an awesome succession plan, and one person will say, I've never even heard of us having a succession plan. And we go, aren't you on the same team? But that's part of the beauty of it, is we need to find ways to get to clarity and get on the same page with the people that we're working with and pursuing causes with. So that's the goal of it. It's free. It's on our website. We encourage every organization to take it. It takes 15 minutes and just get, like you said, a baseline of where they are. And then it helps you get a checklist of what to do next.
Yeah. Well, I would encourage anybody listening to this that they haven't done some kind of exercise like that, where they're doing some sort of self-assessment, that this is one tool that is certainly valuable. You mentioned, this alignment as being one of those areas that has stood out as maybe an area that has opportunity for improvement for many nonprofits. What are maybe the other 1 or 2 others that are most common that people run into when those aha moments of that assessment that maybe come to mind?
Yeah, the report actually has 3 main areas it gives people indications on. One is the alignment. One is awareness. So we actually test how many I don't knows do people say, and so a board member who's been on the board for, 4 months takes this, and 20% of their answers are, I have no idea. Well, that's okay if you've been on for 4 months, but if you've been a board member for 3 years and You're still saying, I don't know to half the questions, then we've got some work to do. So that's where we start, is awareness of what do we even have in the beginning before we start making a plan and figuring out where we go next and, how to grow this organization. But what do we have? So awareness, alignment, and then our third A is action, where what should we do? What are our highest scores? What are our lowest scores on our main 6 competencies? And what do we need to do next to make that into a growth plan for ourselves and our organization? And everything we're talking about is kind of the health and sustainability of the structure of a nonprofit. We don't want to have our nonprofit leaders spending hours and hours and hours talking about how do I get the tool to do a strategic plan. We want them serving their people, doing as much as possible to change the world, change the community, and we want to equip them with all the other tools that they need.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, and I would again, it's missiontriangle.org. If I got the website right,
that's right.
Yeah, missiontriangle.org, and I believe the assessment is on that first page, if I remember correctly. So, encourage people to check that out. And so you work with hundreds of nonprofits, probably if not more, every year. How would you describe the state of nonprofits in the Triangle? And now you all are starting to do work in Charlotte and other places. What does that look like? Is it strong? Is it, does it need it? If you ran it through the health assessment, where would it land, right?
So the average health assessment score is a 75 out of 100 on a level. So we call that the growing phase. We have build, grow, and thrive.
Okay.
So 15% will land on the thriving stage, 25% will land on the building phase, and everybody else lands somewhere in the middle there. So the state is a growing state, right, of our nonprofits. We're all learning. We're all growing. I will tell you, I can speak most confidently about the Triangle area the best because that's where we've had the most time spent. It's an impressive group. I mean, it's really, and you're here as well, so you see it all the time. Yeah. We have incredible leaders leading incredible organizations that have put a lot of years, a lot of time, a lot of resources into building community impacting organizations, not just building organizations for the sake of bigger and better, but into building just dynamic, people loving type of organizations that are actually, impacting their lives. So I'm bullish, if that's the economic term, on the nonprofits in the local area. I think there's incredible wisdom, cause, passion, and kind of experience, advice that we're seeing that they can give to many others in the community. So we're seeing lots of nonprofits begin serving nonprofits in other parts of our state and other parts of our country and world now. Again, some of those organizations, but we're excited about it. Our smaller counties around the state, haven't had as much opportunity to get training and to get resources. And so the smaller the state can grow, like the world is a small place, right? We say that a lot. I would say our state's a small place too, and it's getting smaller, which in the relational sense is great because then we're attached to one another and we can share resources, expertise, and ideas. So even that gets me excited about where we can head with this.
Well, I know one of the big investments you all have made lately is in your pathway, your learning program. You talk about being able to share what you learn beyond the Triangle, right? And this is something that's exciting, and you all are talking about right now and rolling out. What are your hopes for that? What are the dreams for that? And what's the purpose of that pathway program?
Yeah, we have, like everyone else, we have COVID impacts. Right. And so COVID expedited this conversation for us, just like it expedited and messed with conversations all across the sector. But really what we wanted to do, first and foremost, was come alongside of the people that we were already serving, was the first thought for us, and to help them have the resource they need when they needed it. Right. Yeah. So we teach our workshops, one topic every quarter over a 2-year span. So it takes a 2-year rotation. But inevitably, somebody's going to call me after I teach about board governance the day after and say, hey, when are you teaching next about board governance? And I'm going to say, call me back in 2 years. Well, that's not helpful, right? I mean, it's good. We have resources, but that's not what they need right then. So finally, we were able to put together this thing we call Pathway at this point. And we've taken 27 years of teaching, of workshops, of seminars, of small groups, of all kinds of conversations and tool development, and we're putting it online. We developed courses that are between an hour and a half for each course on board governance, strategic planning, fundraising, all those kind of things. 5 to 7 minute videos, so they can take them. They can show them in a board meeting when the board gets into a debate about what is our role or how do we fundraise. Well, this is what some people say, and put it in the hands of nonprofits and leaders across the state. So that was the second piece. We wanted to serve those that we've been called to serve here in the local area, but also we knew that this needed to go to other parts of our state and ultimately the country. And so we wanted to create an avenue for them to get to information and resources without having to travel all the way to the Triangle. So that's part of it. And we're seeing people in Charlotte and Eastern North Carolina and all kinds of places pick up on this and start to use it in different ways.
Well, it's exciting. I mean, to be able to package up some of those learnings, and offer them out beyond the Triangle, I think is such great value. So I was glad to hear, and it was, I know you made no small investment in it as well. So it's, I hope people will take advantage of that. Where can they learn about that, just while we're talking about it? What's the best pathway to Pathway?
The pathway is pathway.missiontriangle.org. It's on our website. You can see it on our homepage as well. And we're rolling out new courses and new kind of pieces to that all the time. So it's really a fun endeavor at this point.
And it's a fairly low barrier to entry as far as cost, if I recall, right? It's pretty affordable.
That's right. 80% of what we do is free because we're funded. We're a nonprofit ourselves. We're funded by the local community to invest in nonprofits. This, because of the high cost of producing things like this, we do charge. It's a monthly or annual subscription, $40 a month, or annual is a little bit cheaper. And if you're a teeny nonprofit, who we have a lot of those awesome teeny nonprofits in our area, it's half off. So we just try to erase every barrier we can while also make sense for everyone.
Well, they would spend that on gas getting to Raleigh. So
once, let alone the whole year.
Yeah, I know, right? So I think that certainly seems to be a value to me. But and then real quick, talk about your relationship with Mission Charlotte and how that has evolved over this last couple of years.
Yeah, so we actually have two what we call sister cities now. We saw people traveling from across the state to get to Raleigh, and again, we want to lower the barrier as much as possible. So we've come alongside of leaders both in Greenville, North Carolina, and they cover the eastern part of the state, and now in the greater Charlotte area, and both of them are taking our stuff, teaching workshops at no cost, come alongside, organizations with coaching, again, at no cost, and helping them figure out, all the pieces that isn't necessarily what they got into the work for. Most leaders came in because of the passion and the cause. And then think about financial statements or marketing plans and development plans is not what they were hoping to do for their career. So we want to do that with them and for them. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, I love, we've had the privilege of working with Mission Charlotte a little bit, and that's been great, and just love seeing it, perpetuate beyond the Triangle and start to sprout in other areas. So that's exciting. From a perspective of those characteristics, you mentioned this health assessment again, what have you found that are commonalities between those ministries, those nonprofits that are the most effective? What are the 2 or 3 kind of key characteristics or the key parts of their makeup that are, most indicative of their success or at least their effectiveness, their impact?
So it all starts with passion, right? You have to have organizations and the leaders that understand their cause and are passionate about it. If the passion wanes, then the organization is going to wane, and you're going to go sideways pretty quickly. But that's pretty normal. I mean, most people in the nonprofit sector have the passion for it. Otherwise, they may do something else because they're often not doing it for the money.
Right.
So they have to have passion. The other word that we say all the time that it's easy to say, it's hard to get to, but is clarity. They just have to have clarity. And visionary leaders, which is often who are leading nonprofits, have 1,000 ideas, and which is awesome. We need it. But how do we get those ideas boiled down to clear statements, clear stories, clear expectations, clear asks, clear invitations to being involved, clear explanations of how that can impact the community. So the organizations that thrive are the ones that can really figure out how to get to that clarity. I feel like that's really important. And the third piece I'd probably say is leadership. A good, solid organization has to have great people, and great people that understand what it means to lead, what it means to rally troops, what it means to give people feedback, invite people into the cause, all the different parts of leadership. And if you will that down, board governance is incredibly important, and often the first, if not one of the 2 or 3 main topics people call us about. Because they're like, I don't know what this even means. I don't know what they're supposed to do, but whatever they're doing is not what I want them to do. All of those kind of questions come up. And so if we can get to some clarity around leadership, now we've got some rocket fuel happening. Now we've got some ability to take some steps forward. So that's what, again, great organizations we see have figured out how to do that well. And usually it's by asking good questions and trial and error sometimes, but people investing in themselves. The other piece I would say, David, is that nonprofit leaders, if I'm going to issue a challenge to them, is that I'll use us as well, need to invest in our organizations and invest in ourselves as leaders. We, for various reasons, feel guilty about investing any time, any resource, anything in our organization's health and our organization's sustainability, and us as leaders and us as balanced leaders, all of those pieces. And with 66% of nonprofit leaders leaving the job in the next 5 years, we've got to invest in healthy leaders so that they can continue to run good, healthy organizations.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with a number of the folks on this podcast. The 15% myth, right? That idea that only 15% can go to operations, and all of those things is certainly it perpetuates the idea that certainly lean is good, right? I mean, you don't want to have a lot of fat, but my experience with nonprofits is that they cut that lean too closely, right? That they sacrifice too much when it comes to their people, when it comes to their resources, to their training, to all of those things, right? And not because they have a malevolent purpose, but more so just wanting so much to focus on the impact and the investing of that, which I admire that. But one of the things, again, we just talk about often is don't be penny wise and pound foolish, right? You may save a few pennies here, but in the long run, in the sustainability of your organization, if you're having turnover every couple of years, if you're having, significant issues with keeping people or maintaining their level of training or any of those things, ultimately that's going to, in the long run, cost you even more than what you invest in the front end, right? I mean, am I off base there?
No, I completely agree with that. We just used the stat that it takes $4,000 at least to hire a new person to replace somebody that was there. So to think of investing $500 a year in a person should not be a thing. We're just willing to do that.
That doesn't seem unreasonable, right?
Professional development and, time off or whatever we need to keep good people we have all over this state in the jobs and care for them well, so that we don't run ourselves into a deeper hole is really important. I would also say to the 15% stat that we need to understand really what is pure operations versus actually programs. Sometimes we over anticipate what we need to put in what bucket. Ultimately, so much of what we do on a daily basis is for the sake of the mission, right? That's the program. So, not to dive in too deeply on that topic.
No, I think it's a great conversation. I mean, we could probably do an entire podcast series on just that, right? But I encourage people to learn more, right? I don't necessarily believe that I'm right about everything, believe it or not. Even though my wife would probably disagree with me, that it certainly is one of those areas where people just, I think, need to spend more time understanding what that looks like and what is a healthy organization, right? I mean, My guess is, I know when I go out and I do webinars or workshops and all, one of the questions I ask is, how many of your organizations have a line item in your budget for marketing, right? And I may get 35% raise their hand. So that means 65% haven't even designated any money to one of the most important things of communicating. Now, that doesn't mean maybe they're not spending money on that, but they haven't made it a priority to do that. And my guess is many would say the same for like professional, trainings, professional development, right? How many of you have a budget for professional development? My guess would be very few. Well, maybe not very few, but a majority would say that they probably haven't created a line item for that. That doesn't mean they don't do it, but they just haven't made it a priority. Do you think that's fair or?
Yeah, I think it's totally fair. Maybe I'll just make a suggestion. Go out and talk about marketing. You go out and talk about professional development. So it doesn't sound self-serving, but I think we're running organizations.
Right.
If we don't want to do any of that, then that's fine. Then they're not organizations, right? We go out and we serve, and we need as much of that as possible. But once we start running an organization, we need the pieces in order to help it be sustainable and to grow.
Yeah. One of the questions I thought about was, what you all serve primarily Christian nonprofits or Christian centered. I know that's not the only people you serve, but I know that's the primary focus of the organization. What makes ministries different than maybe a secular organization other than just the faith aspect? What is there anything? Are they very similar and it's just the faith that makes them different?
Well, I would say they're the same and they're different, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna dance on that question just a little bit. They're the same in the basic operating principles, right?
Right.
You got to have a board. You need to do fundraising. You have to have a plan. You have to have staff leadership, marketing, measuring outcomes, all those kind of things that translate all over the place. And most of them translate into the business world as well. Like these are fundamental business leadership principles that we've got to have in our organizations. Now, where is it different? We talk about triple bottom line in our sense, in the sense of we're trying to impact individuals, communities, and then ultimately eternity. Talking about faith-based. So we have to think through, what does this look like? What does our mission playing itself out look like in light of the individuals we're serving that live in the greater community and that are part of a greater calling towards that faith-centered lifestyle that leads them into kind of the eternal conversation. So that's always part of where we are. Now, I'll give you a tangible, how do we do board governance from a faith-based organization? Well, hopefully there is more prayer, there's discernment, there's a little bit of a different focus of how do we, find our answers, so to speak. How do we listen to one another, and what methodical steps we take includes understanding and approaching it from that faith space as well.
No, that's great. If you could, just from a faith perspective, if you could pray for one thing for, I was going to say the magic wand, but we'll stick with the faith thing, right? If you could pray for one thing for nonprofits in North Carolina, we'll focus there. What would it be that you would really like to see nonprofits gain or have access to or experience?
Well, in typical fashion, maybe I'll say three things. How about that?
No, that's fun.
They're all under the banner of how do we move this forward as a community. I think I would challenge funders to see nonprofit leaders as experts and as wise people that understand a cause. And if we can then partner together in that sense around that. I believe Jean Tedrow just mentioned something along these lines in your last podcast, but I fully agree with what she's saying, is that we need to get ourselves as much as possible kind of on that equal footing, as opposed to funders being seen as having the answers. Nonprofits are trying to just do good work. Nonprofit leaders, again, have such amazing insight into the issues and the problems of our communities that we need to leverage that. So that's my prayer, is kind of seeing eye to eye in some sense.
So do you see that as a is that a power dynamic, or how would you see that, in terms of, relationally? Is it a power thing? Is it a control, or is it more of just human nature, right? I don't know.
Well, I think the long answer is that's a podcast part 2, but the quick answer is, yeah, there's a power dynamic. Anytime that money is involved, we have to understand that money is influence or access, etc. And how do we leverage that well? How do we place people on an equal plane as you're having that conversation? But I think the power of wisdom and insight the nonprofit sector has in ultimate goals of a thriving community is incredible power.
Yeah, so no, I agree.
Have to have that conversation. The other piece, if I get real tangible about prayer, is I would pray for great community members to step into board governance seats. Inside of these nonprofits. Nonprofits need to have great partners. That's the tangible partner level. It's I will come inside. I will be part of your organization. I will help you lead as a volunteer. I will help you guide. I'll keep you accountable. All those things that the board needs to do. We have such great organizations that have a real need for, 5 to 7 individuals for a season of their life investing in that way. So we need the talent to come alongside talented leaders.
And I think, and real quick, just an aside from that, I've been in a couple of your board trainings and all. One of the things I've heard you say is, and this goes back to clarity, right? Is what is really expected of those board members and being clear about that. Because I think that's where things go off the rails, right? Is when a board member comes in with certain expectations, the director or the other board members or whomever is expecting something else, and they're both wrong, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, ask questions on the front end. I mean, everybody should ask plenty of questions, do your research, get the tools you need, get to clarity, and then go forward. Yeah.
Because sadly, in some ways, board positions have been vanity in some places, right? That it's like to say they're on the board, and I've done that. I'll be honest, transparency here. I've done that too, but so anyway, but I know you have one more at least that you want to share for your prayer.
Yeah, I'd probably throw out that my message to nonprofit leaders would be, and maybe this is just the flip side of the coin from what I said to the funders. Again, I think Jean Tedra did a great job in her podcast of saying it, but it's, be confident. Just know what you know, no matter if you have the formal education or, the master's degree or whatever it is, you usually have life experience, program leading, people working experience that again, people need to hear. So be confident, be excited about what's going on, and see fundraising, even if we go down that lane, as invitation to opportunity. So it'd be fun to see us all having really good conversations. And again, I think North Carolina is healthy. I think the work of a lot of people you've had on the podcast has certainly shown that. But there's more we can do. Yeah. Yes. Amen to that. I love it. So what I heard was we want to flatten the power dynamic there between financial supporters and leaders of nonprofits, that we want to continue to trust our nonprofit our nonprofit leaders and encourage them to have confidence in themselves. And the second one was to step into board seats. Yeah, that's right. The board. So, to strengthen those boards, right? And to make sure that we're having really solid leadership. Because, I shouldn't say this, but, the status of our political world right now is a mess, right? And sometimes I wonder how we end up with the 2 candidates for president we end up with when we have a country of 360 million people. And I'm like, how did we get to these 2 people, right? Well, North Carolina, there's so, and beyond, there's so many people that we have to engage with who are so smart and
are so good-hearted and want to invest in these things. And how do we attract them to this world, right? How do we get them to a place where they want to serve and make it attractive enough, but also not to cut them too much slack, right? So I think there's something there that we have to, continue to work on and figure out. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for your time. Any last words you'd like to leave with your other nonprofit leaders who are hopefully listening to this?
No, I'll just keep encouraging everyone to be confident in that sense. I think I'll just go ahead and throw out my other soapbox. And as you mentioned, Power Dynamic, I think I've seen this on some of your social media before, but I'm a big advocate, and someday, let me do our 10-year vision here, changing our whole term to social impact or social profit organizations. I know the nonprofit is the word we're using, and it's a word on the shirt that you're wearing, but to be defined as something that we're not is not as helpful as they could be. I challenge all of our organizations to see themselves as social impact, like impacting the community. That's what we're after. That's what we want to call people towards. Not, hey, go out and do great work by not making a profit. Doesn't seem like it's that compelling. But go out and do great work by impacting people's lives. That's what you're already doing. So let's see it through the right lens. But
no, I agree. I think that's one of those long-term, almost societal type of evolutions we're going to have to work on. But I agree. It's one of the few places that describes what you are by what you're not. So,
what we are is a rich community in terms of people who care, people who are invested, neighbors who are loving one another. And we see it across 500 organizations every year. And it's encouraging. And anybody who's not already involved should take a chance and get involved somewhere. That'd be my final words, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you, Mission Triangle. You all continue to do great work. We love you guys and are just grateful for you. Just remind people how they can find out more about Mission Triangle.
MissionTriangle.org, and there you'll find events on our website as well. We have a workshop on strategic planning coming up in September, live in the local area, and would welcome anybody to join us for that. And if you do, through this podcast, come up and say hello, and we'll make sure to give Angel Oak a shout out at them on the back end.
Well, we appreciate that. And thank you everybody for listening. Find out more about Angel Oak at angeloakcreative.com. The podcast, just as a reminder, is Nonprofit State of Minds. If you're listening to this, you found it, but would love to have you share it. We're on Spotify and Apple and all those platforms. So have an exciting time doing our first podcast, and this has been fun. So Daniel, thank you for your time. God bless you guys, and look forward to seeing you. God continue to use you to prosper the ministries and nonprofits you serve.
Well, thank you, David. We appreciate your partnership. Look forward to more to come.
All right. Take care, brother.